At some point, it goes wrong. At some point, we all have those garden fails, and this time, it's my turn. Scott, I'm really going to need your help on this one, mate.
Oh, hi, Eli. I'm busy with all of my tomato plants. I'm moving them to bigger pots. What do you need?
Yeah, all right. You've got loads. I get it. Yeah, I had loads. I had awesome germination. Damping off. Sucks.
Oh, Eli, I'm so sorry to hear that, but that's a normal part of gardening. That's going to happen to everyone at one point or another. I can't tell you how many plants I've lost over the years to damping off. Now, one of the reasons my plants look so good is because I've been doing this for so long. I've been growing tomatoes since you were in nappies. Problems happen, but move forward. Do you have something that you can pot on today?
Do have some tomatoes to work with today because it's that time of year. You can resow, you have time, things will catch up. So this little guy, the original black Krim, he is currently about maybe 23, 24 days old. These little guys, believe it or not, are about 8 days old. So you can see there's not an awful lot in it. I'm actually going to get these guys potted up today. So I'm going to take you through it.
As you can see, my tomatoes are actually doing pretty well. This is the tray I started with the varieties that we agreed we would grow together. And I've got this flat. I started these a little bit later, but some of them are getting ready to transplant.
Here is my thing about potting on my tomatoes then. I already spoke to you about this little guy, the little Krim, and I mentioned he's already got his first set of second leaves. You would normally wait until your little tomato seedlings have got at least one set of those second leaves before you pot them on. Reason being, that way they've got quite a good root system going, you know they're growing, they're quite healthy. You have got leaves there because when we handle them, we use the old baby leaves, and that way if we damage those, it's got those strong second leaves. So you're not then risking killing the plant by taking away its vital leaves. But I'm actually going to pot these guys on, even though they're just starting to get their second leaves. They're not in yet. Now you can also see I've got 2 or 3 plants per cell. I don't want them growing on in there. The roots are going to get all tangled. So I'm going to separate things out now. So these are the little pots that I'm going to be potting up into. Now, honestly, these are probably a bit bigger than I would like, but this is the next size up I've got for these pots, so this is what I'm going to put them into. So some of the reasons why you maybe wouldn't pot up so quickly into a pot of this size, you don't want too much spare compost around the little seedling because it's quite small, the roots aren't that expansive yet, so that when you water there's going to be a lot of wet compost in there that little seedling's not going to use up quickly. And there is a risk then that he's sitting in the wet, it could damage his roots. So I'm going to have to be very careful with my watering when I put them in here. But I have these capillary watering beds I use, so they'll be getting watered from the bottom, so I should be okay hopefully. But this is where they're going. Now, my process is incredibly simple. I like to keep things as easy as I can. All I'm doing, literally, is I'm just going to push the little guys out of here. I'm going to tease them apart, and I'll show you a trick for that. I'm going to put them into the pot with some nice new compost. So, simply, all of these module trays have a hole in the bottom, and that allows drainage when you're watering, but it also allows you to push from the bottom, and if I show you, it allows you to push that entire little plug out. So that's what I'm doing here. So I've got some nice new potting mix in here, and if I can get him, and there we go. So what you can see here, or at least I hope you can see, is this little plug with the 2 plants, and you can see he's got all these little roots coming down there. Now, the thing is, I'm going to move this out of the way because I want you to see this. It's quite a cool trick. I have 2 plants and I want to separate them. So you will see a lot of folk will just break it here like this, and that works. But if I do that, I'm going to risk tearing roots I didn't mean to tear. So I'm going to do this with gravity. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to hold on to one baby leaf from each of these plants, and I'm just going to shake it. And what will happen is the 2 plants will naturally come apart. And that means that I'm damaging things as little as possible. Now, I've already said I'm going to bury these deep. So I'm actually going to bury them in this pot right up until that first set of leaves. There we go. And I'll just backfill around them with some compost. I'm going to give him a good water just to settle him in, and then that's him done. So there we go then. That's my super simple potting up of my tomato seedlings. So Mr. Master Gardener with your massive plants, what do you do? Do you do anything different?
So I don't have the kind of cells that have the big hole in the bottom that I can just punch out. What I have to do is actually pry the plant out of the cell and put it in to one of the pots. The rest of it's pretty much the same. I'm looking for the true leaves that have developed on the plant. I take my pot, I fill it about halfway full, and then I come in, and once I've picked out a plant that has the true leaves, I come in and pry it out. This is just a wooden tongue depressor. I push it down to the bottom of the cell, and I get the same root development. It's a single plug. I'm just using this tongue depressor to support the plant as I set it into my little pot. And I'm not touching the plant at all as part of this process. And I'll firm down the edges around the plant. Once there's enough of the soil to hold it in place, I can remove the tongue depressor and then continue to add more. And I will bury some of the stem at this point. And this little seedling is all ready to go. Now, I have this other tray, and it's a little bit different because I don't have the individual cells. I'm growing these plants in open soil. And so for this one, I pick a nice plant with true leaves on it, come down, and I'll pry it out, holding the root section as well, because I don't have the plug development. Place it into my pot, again using the tongue depressor to help support it, and then I'll backfill with the potting mix all the way around it, gently firming. Once the soil is in place, I can remove the tongue depressor, and I'll just fill the rest of this pot, burying a bit of the stem. And this one is about ready to go as well. And as I go along, I make sure that I put a plant tag in each of these pots to identify what it was I just transplanted. And now it's just a simple process of doing this as quickly as I can, filling these pots, prying out these little tomato seedlings, putting it in place, and you can see with a little bit of practice, this can actually go pretty quickly. Firm the soil, put it in the tray. Before you know it, I'm going to have these done. Eli, I still have about 100 of these to do. Could I trouble you for a cuppa?
Really? Suppose you'll be wanting a hot cross bun as well. Here you go.
That is so nice of you. Thank you. Wow, are those hot cross buns?
is it not always really interesting to see all the different ways that people do things? And also, this is quite cool. You saw me at the start of this video telling you how I had a fail. I hate using that term. I think there's too much fixation on seeing things go wrong. Things go wrong for all of us. But at the start of this video, I was telling you how things had gone wrong for me, and now look. No compost in it yet. And here is the difference. So I've went from 1 or maybe 2 tomato seedlings to a massive tray's worth. This time of year is great, things really do catch. And the thing is, as long as I get all my seeds sown before the end of this month, it's not too late for me for tomatoes. Speaking of which, let me put this down because it's heavy. So I said speaking of which, that is the tomatoes that I'm going to be growing in my greenhouse. Obviously with a few spares because I can't fit that amount in here. But my next lot are going to be the tomatoes that I'll be sowing to grow outside. That is quite a big exciting thing for me, so that's the next lot of seeds I'm going to be sowing, and I'm going to be doing them this week. So stay tuned and we'll do that together. But for all these tomatoes then, the ones that I've just potted on and are that little bit further, what's next? Well, basically, as I said, they're going to live in here, so they're not going to be going out into the garden or anything. But the way I grow my tomatoes in my greenhouse is I grow everything in pots. For the regular viewers, you know that I've got a system that I use called quad grows. Now, unfortunately, you can't get them anymore. The company no longer exists that make them, which is a shame because it is one of the few products that I heartily recommend. But what it is, it's a system of pots that use capillary matting which go into a water reservoir. And from there, that means that the tomatoes, peppers, aubergines, whatever I'm growing, get a regular and even watering and feeding because it all happens in that reservoir. So that's where most of my little plants are destined to live. Now, there is something else that's going to be happening. I'm testing something out this year. Because you can't get the quad grows anymore, I'm going to test out another similar system. It's called Oasis boxes. Now, I sent a bunch of these Oasis boxes over to Scott because he has real problems growing in his greenhouse because of the amount of sun and heat they get. Very different from us. So we're going to test these out together and then compare them in our 2 environments. So Scott, that's your chance then. You've potted on all your magnificent little seedlings. Tell us, next steps for you then, what's happening with your little tomato plants?
So as I finish filling these trays with the transplanted tomatoes, I'm putting them under lights on all these different trays, and I have other lights in other places because it's still cold here, too cold for me to move these to my greenhouse. So I have to keep them indoors under lights. And like you, I'm going to have at least one more transplanting of these pots into a bigger pot. This is the Oasis that you were talking about, and I will be using this as a container for some of my tomato plants. It has this insert that goes into a self-feeding reservoir, and so yeah, this is new. It's going to be interesting to see what we find out about this system. I'll probably use this as that 3rd step. So we started with the seedlings here, we moved to the small pot, and some of the tomatoes will go into these Oasis pots to go into the greenhouse. My greenhouse should buy me a couple extra weeks, so that's why I think these might work.
So it's fabby. There's so much more going to be coming from Scott and I, showing you how this progresses on for the rest of the year in our very different growing environments. Oh, just finish this up. By the way, Scott, you're on dishes, by the way.
That's the problem when making a video with Eli and Kate. I always get outvoted when it comes to the dishes. Hey, if you like the tomato journey that we're on and you want to continue, watch this video next. In that video, Eli's going to give you all of her best tomato growing tips. See you, folks.